Good afternoon. I'm April Davis here with Erin Moran and Faith Ponti with Healing Your Life with Soft Roast Recovery. And we're talking about therapy and recovery from addiction. And so I just wanted to introduce Erin and Faith quickly so that you know who we're speaking with today from Soft Roast. And first, Erin Moran. She is a licensed mental health counselor and certified group practitioner. She comes from Orange County, New York, but she is officially a Jacksonville native now, been here for 12 years, received her Bachelor of Science and also her Master of Science in Clinical Health Counseling. So she is now a therapist at Soft Roast Recovery, and she's gained lots of experience working as a clinical manager as well at a dual diagnosis residential substance abuse treatment facility and an outpatient eating disorder facility. She had a part-time private practice as well, and she's been fortunate enough to work with people from lots of different backgrounds, experiencing lots of concerns, including various forms of addiction, trauma, anxiety, depression, identity conflicts, and histories of abuse and relationship stress. Erin's therapy style incorporates client-centered interpersonal work, emotion-focused, and psychodynamic approaches. She believes in treating the whole person and working toward healing the mind, body, and spirit. And of course, we have to talk about her as a person, as a whole person outside her time at work as a therapist. She also enjoys snuggling with her dog and her cat, yoga, and watching Marvel shows and movies, and of course, taking off to the mountains whenever she has an opportunity. So welcome, Erin.
Yes, thank you.
And we love to tell people about who we're speaking with. So we have another therapist with us today, Faith Ponti, and she's a registered mental health counselor intern. She received her 2 bachelor's degrees. So she also attended University of North Florida, which we're very familiar with, as well as University of Tampa. As a therapist, she has worked in a variety of settings, including school-based counseling for adolescents, nonprofit counseling for the working uninsured, general outpatient mental health for children and adults, and dual diagnosis, IOP, and PHP. And in her work as a therapist, she likes to leverage her authenticity to encourage her clients toward vulnerability and limitless self-compassion. She works to maintain a safe space for clients to experience growing pains, make mistakes, take accountability, and forgive themselves and others. And in her free time, she likes to listen to podcasts. She spends her time with her son, going to the beach. Of course, we have to do that here in Jacksonville. And my favorite, she watches Bob's Burgers. So welcome, Faith.
Thank you so much. I love Bob's Burgers.
I know. I mean, we got to have a little fun in our life, right? So today we're talking about exactly what is therapy. And when people come to see you both at Soft Roast Recovery, what exactly should they expect? So we can start with Faith today, or Faith or Erin can chime in whenever you like, obviously. But, obviously this is a big deal for some people that may have never had therapy before, or even if you're diving back into it and you've done it before. But what if it is your first time?
I would just normalize. It's okay and normal to feel really nervous and scared if it's your first time. I think a lot of us start to wonder, what is this person going to think about me? Do I have to spill all of my secrets the first time I meet this person? What are they going to expect of me? And I think then they're also thinking, are they going to know that I'm scared? Or can they tell that I'm nervous? And the answer is, yeah, sometimes we can tell, but also that's a really normal, okay thing. And our hope is right off the bat, we're normalizing that and making that okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that just to kind of help, there's not much as a therapist that I think we haven't heard and experiences that we haven't witnessed, and that's all normal. It's a human experience. I can't talk about how many times people have come in my office and have cried that first time, and I'm like, I don't know why I'm crying. I don't know what's happening right now. And it's like, well, because what therapy is a safe, supportive, non-judgmental environment. And even if we have maybe amazing friends and family and coworkers, there's not often that there's a place just for us, just for our feelings, just for our experiences, to just be held. And so sometimes just creating that environment brings up a lot of emotions that maybe we haven't even realized exist.
So if someone has the question, what is therapy? Which seems like a really big question to me, but what is therapy?
I think it depends on who you ask. I think because we're here and you're asking us, specifically me, I would say that therapy is, to echo Erin, a safe place that exists just for you. And not necessarily a vacuum where you would receive advice. I think that's maybe a misconception. Is I think we're sometimes viewed as life coaches, right? Where it's like, these are the 5 issues in my life that I need you to fix. Or like I'm a puzzle, right? And I'm missing these pieces or I can't find these pieces. And hopefully by the end of our sessions, I'll be a full puzzle. I don't think humans are puzzles. I think that we're more like gardens. And I think sometimes we have weeds in our garden, or we're like, where did this thorny bush come from? I never even recognized that, right? And I think what therapy is a place to say like, hey, you actually have the tools to dig these weeds out. You have the Miracle Grow. You have the watering can. You have the water. You have all the tools. You just can't find your tool shed. Or your tool shed is really dirty and really messy, so you need help maybe organizing it, right? But it's never like, you come in, I take control of your garden, I dig out the weeds, I, buy you all new tools. You got the tools. You got the tools, you got the shed, you got the garden. And you know what? You're probably going to leave still with some weeds because I'm a human and I have weeds, right? Like we all have those things in our life or in our hearts and in our brains that feel sticky or that feel confusing and mangly. And that's part of being a human. So what therapy is, again, is please show me where my tools are so that I can better take care of my garden. And please teach me how to have acceptance for the parts of my garden that aren't perfect all the time. And to recognize that, I don't need this beautiful, picturesque place to be perfect and just aesthetically pleasing, right? I need to be able to come in and recognize, like, this is my heart, this is my brain, this is my home, and I accept it for what it is. So that's how I view what I'm doing with a client.
I love that metaphor.
I
I've
do
never heard you
too.
say that before. I love that.
I also like that you use the Miracle Grow analogy because I use it and I know what it can do for my plants.
Well,
so
the thing
I
is
want some.
And sometimes we're putting Miracle Grow on our weeds, right? Like
Yes.
we're really, we're saying, well, why is this so huge? Why do I have so many like just invasive species in my garden?
So true.
It's like, well, homegirl, what are you watering?
Yeah. What are you feeding?
What are you nurturing? Yeah. What are you feeding?
Yeah.
And so, Erin, when people say, why do I even need to do it? I know, so I've gone to therapy. I appreciate therapy. I think it works for me. And so I'm curious when people say, well, what's the point? What's the benefit? Why should I even try this? Because I don't like talking to other people about my problems.
Yeah, absolutely. Because that's hard. It's really hard and it's really uncomfortable to be open, to be really vulnerable. Therapy is different in that space. It is really just for you. My agenda, I don't have an agenda going into it. My agenda is to understand, to maybe be a guide, to sort of walk that path with you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to help you to learn your patterns, to pay attention to when we're maybe feeding weeds or identifying maybe what is a weed. I'm not going to say that's a weed. I'm going to let you sort of start to talk about it and ask you questions. And we're going to kind of determine together, oh, this has actually pricked me a lot. I've gotten cut on this a lot. So now what do I want to do with it? Do I want to prune it back? Do I want to get rid of it? So it's challenging behaviors. It's identifying unhealthy thoughts. It's developing a different relationship with our feelings. So often people think like just because I feel something that means it's good or it's bad. It's a feeling. It's giving you information. It's giving you knowledge so that you can slow down, pause, then take a next step. So that's really where we're coming in, is just helping you to better understand.
Right. And this is Erin Moran. She's the clinical director at Soft Roast Recovery here in Jacksonville. We're speaking with her, as well as therapist Faith Ponti. And this is Healing Your Life with Soft Roast Recovery. If you decide that you'd like to reach out after listening and knowing that at least you could ask some questions, it's free to do that. You can call Soft Roast at 904-439-4805. Again, that number is 904-439-4805. And you can also just check them out if you're not ready for the phone call at softroastrecovery.com. So we're talking about what exactly is therapy? Why do we need it? Why would we even reach out? And so why not just talk with a friend or a family member?
Jump in on that one, Faith.
Valid question. I think that we get a lot. I think especially if somebody comes in and maybe they're not necessarily fully bought into the process, right? Like they know they need help and they're here, but they're still confused. Oh, I talked to my partner about this, or I talked to my best friend or my sister or my mom. And a concept I really like to talk about and educate on is just the concept of non-vested interest. Like when you're in a therapist's office, we want what's best for you, right? But we recognize that what's best for you is incredibly subjective. And whatever decisions you end up making in your life ultimately are not going to affect our personal lives. Anybody you're talking to that you know well, that you're seeking, again, advice from, which we're not really going to give you, has some stock in whatever decision you make. Even if it's the smallest stock, even if it's, if you take this job, in the back of my head, I know you're going to call me 15 times next week stressed. Or if you go to this school, I know you're going to be 5 hours farther away from me, right? Or if you continue dating this person, I'm going to have to continue watching you get hurt, right? No matter who you're talking to in your life, they want what's best for you, but in some way, they have a personal stake in the situation.
Yeah.
We, as therapists, or I know your style and I know me as a therapist, I'm not going to tell you which job to take, right? I'm not going to tell you. I will never, ever, rarely ever tell you to end a relationship with a partner, right? I'm not going to tell you what school to go to. What I am going to do is I'm going to sit there and make you really think about what feels aligned for you in this moment, what makes sense for you. And the hard part of that is that a lot of people in your life might really not like that and disagree with that. But I'm going to be the one person who's going to challenge you to look at that.
Yeah.
And I don't know if anybody else in your life would really do that. And if they do, maybe they should go to school to be a therapist. That's impressive.
Yeah. And I don't think that friends or family often have, bad intentions with that. Of course not. Most of the people in our lives want good things for us. But again, we want what you're wanting, what deep down is the right thing for you to do right now, even if we know that there's going to be mistakes and hardships. We're not trying to make you steer away from that. We're wanting you to allow yourself to walk a path that feels right for you right now.
Yeah. And the other thing I've found is as I get older and, people have families and children and all that fun stuff, and we have full lives, right? So trying to use your friend as a therapist is kind of a bad idea is what I found, because you might lose that friendship depending on the situation. So we can talk a little bit more about that, and maybe that it could be a burden to others. And so, this outlet to be able to have a therapist and also to just have that privacy is such a great thing. So we'll talk about that when we get back from the break. We're talking to Faith Ponti, a therapist at Soft Roast Recovery, and also the clinical director, Erin Moran. This is Healing Your Life with Soft Roast Recovery. And if you want to call Soft Roast, you can give them a call at 904-439-4805. Again, 904-439-4805. And you can also check out their website. It's softroastrecovery.com. And Soft Roast is spelled SOPHROS recovery.com. Again, this is Healing Your Life with Soft Roast Recovery. Welcome back to Healing Your Life with Soft Roast Recovery. We are joined by therapist Faith Ponti and the clinical director over at Soft Roast Recovery. Her name is Erin Moran. And we're talking about what exactly is therapy and what can you expect when you go to see the folks over at Soft Roast. So we were talking earlier about maybe not using your friend as your therapist, because it could end up, you have to consider their feelings too, and it could be a burden to them. We all have full lives, and if you do it if you make a pattern, I feel like that could be an issue.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think what kind of comes to my mind is sort of mental health is health. And, your friends are your support system. They're people who you can, yes, talk to. They're not people who maybe you want to use to really heal or to fix something that feels like it's really stuck. I know we're talking about not fixing, but to unstuck ourselves. And I kind of like to use an example of our physical body. We often talk about prioritizing going to the gym. We should get annual physicals every year. Well, that's also what therapy is. It is for your mind. It's for your thoughts and your emotions. So we don't just need to go to therapy when we're feeling really down, when we're feeling really depressed, when we're feeling really low. We also want to go when maybe things are just feeling okay, or if we're feeling maybe good, but I know that there's an opportunity to navigate this situation or this stressor or this relationship in a healthier way. It is mental health. And that's where, us as therapists, we can come in and provide those resources and those skills, not just going when things are really rough.
Mm-hmm. And not to invalidate those really great soul-searching, heart-to-heart conversations you have with your friends. Those are really important. And it's not unhelpful, and it could potentially heal parts of you or even parts of that relationship. And as your therapist, we're going to encourage those heart-to-heart conversations, right, in order to heal that relationship. But there's a definite difference between having those heart-to-hearts or choosing to disclose something really personal about yourself to somebody you care about, and hopefully that you trust to treat that information with care. And then having a space that you're regularly going, whether it's weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, whatever, where it's just for you. And it's kind of your own workshop and you're just doing you for that hour, right? That's a big difference. So I would encourage you to continue those fun conversations that are really helpful and beautiful. And then also maybe debrief them with your therapist.
Yeah. It's an and.
Yeah.
We want to create more tools, more resources, more support, more clarity, more healing, more just feeling good or feeling balanced or feeling clear. That's what we want to create, and that's where we come in.
Mm-hmm. Right. And there are some things that perhaps, even if you feel you should, you might not want to share with your friend, because there are things that at least I have realized that I need to protect myself, and I need to protect certain relationships. For example, a marriage, you wouldn't necessarily want to share everything with your friend about your husband or wife or spouse, because that's a relationship that should be protected. Now, I know we're talking about addiction recovery, but obviously that sometimes involves the people around you. So have you run into that where maybe people have overshared outside of therapy?
In my personal life.
Yeah.
Right.
I have overshared outside of therapy for sure. And I've had people, be careful who you tell your therapist to, because you'll get an earful. Yeah, absolutely. And you said, we're talking about addictions, but sometimes that includes people outside of your life. I say always, that always includes. I think I like to say, we're addictions counselors, right? We work mostly in addictions, but I feel like we're trauma counselors, right?
Oh, yeah.
We're relationship counselors.
100%.
Addiction is a coping skill that individuals use when relationships, mental health, emotional health is breaking down.
Yep.
Right.
When life gets too hard.
Right. So we specialize in a very specific coping skill, but the roots, so again, metaphor, the roots of that plant, that weed, are the same no matter what the weed looks like, right?
Yep.
So, but sure. I think that the difficult part is the potential of fostering resentment in friendships, or you're right, sharing something that you don't know where the information's going, right? So therapy is, we say, nearly 100% confidential, right? There's certain things that would cause us to break confidentiality, which I will share for the sake of the listeners, right? We'll break confidentiality if you have an active threat to really hurt yourself or somebody else fatally, right? We're not going to let that slide. And then also, if you were to disclose anything about a child being abused, but otherwise, everything you talk about is going to stay here. Even if we're in contact with your family members, even if you say hey, I want my mom to know about the process of my recovery, we're still not going to call mom and debrief her on our whole session that we had, right? And you would hope your friend's not going to do that with your partner, right? But who knows? You tell your partner, or you tell your friend something really personal. You and your friend have an argument or a fight. Now your friend, who you trusted a lot in that moment, has really personal information about you, right? You could throw everything in my office. You could scream at me. You could curse at me. I cannot get vindictive to the point where I'm now going to share personal information that you gave me.
There's
in the
no
room,
retaliation.
Right.
There might be a consequence of, or maybe we won't continue if you're going to throw things in my office. But
I can't use your information against you.
It's never going to come against you. Absolutely.
I just think that's an important point to make, only because it is sometimes, if maybe you didn't come from a family background where therapy was involved and it was a common thing. I certainly did not, but I've learned as an adult that it's very helpful and important in my life. So I think it's important to hear that it's completely private and how it can be beneficial. So do therapists sit around this is another thing that probably people assume if they've never had therapy or you didn't come from a family in which counseling was involved. Do you just sit around and judge us? That's what we want to know.
So, man, we get this all the time, especially when first introducing people and they learn that, I'm a therapist. Like, oh, you're just sitting around and analyzing. And I'm going to say yes and no.
Right.
No, that's not a fun side gig of, whoa, why did you say that? And I wonder what's underneath that. No, that's not fun to continuously analyze and try and nitpick why and what was said. But that is a part of our job. That's something that has been trained into us to pay attention to patterns, to behaviors, to looking at like what might be happening underneath. That doesn't mean that there's a judgment. I have a high threshold for, judging people because I'm human. I struggle with and experience many things that my clients sit with. I sometimes can be really harsh in the way that I'm talking to myself. I can sometimes being like, well, I didn't do the dishes and just walked past them many a times because that's just really overwhelming and it just something simple and easy, but it's feeling really hard right now. Like I tell our clients all the time, I think I said this last week, humaning is hard. I know what that experience is like. I've had depression, I've had anxiety. So the judging is not a, you did that. No, same. Like I want to be like, hand up, same.
Yeah.
It's a part of, though, I am going to be noticing probably patterns and behaviors because that is how my training and my background have taught me to do. But there's not a judgment in that.
I would
There's not
hope
a
that you do
criticism.
notice my behaviors because I need you to do that as my therapist. Yes. So on that note, if you think if this is convincing you, maybe I should try out this therapy thing. At least let me dip a little toe in the water. You can do that with Soft Roast Recovery. And again, that's spelled SOPHROS, softroastrecovery.com, or you can give them a call. That's how they get most of their questions and clients. And you can call them at 904-439-4805. Again, 904-439-4805. We're talking with the clinical director, Erin Moran, and a therapist, Faith Ponti. And so, Faith, we were talking about judging and analyzing, and you're a therapist there, so it's always good to get another perspective. So when you get that question, people say, well, I'm afraid to tell you this. I'm afraid you're going to judge me. First of all, we've talked about the privacy element, but what do you say to that?
Yeah, I feel like judge is such a harsh word.
Yeah.
And I think somebody asking me if I'm judging them is them asking, are you taking in the information that I'm telling you and then turning it into a criticism in your mind, right? And then viewing me through a lens that's different than how I want you to view me. And that's really hard. I mean, it's human, right? We do that. We have, we make judgments based on perceptions or based on information. But also, I mean, the amount of training that we have that then forces us to look at ourselves and clean our own stuff out, right? Which is horrifying and very scary.
And rewarding.
And rewarding.
And rewarding, yes.
Just the intense for 2 years in training, right? They're telling us to do that. And then so in supervision and so forth. And then how many stories we hear and how many people we see in walks of life. For me to then take your information and A, be shocked by any of it, and B, be shocked or disgusted to the point where I'm now viewing you in a really negative light. I mean, I feel like that would take a lot more effort than the actual compassion and empathy that I'm feeling for you as a human. Because like Erin said, I too am a person. I too fall asleep in my mascara sometimes, right? I think people forget that. I think people walk in and they see us. And I think at Soft Roast specifically, we really try to be people first.
Yeah.
We're professional, we're clinicians, the confidentiality is there. You're not our friends, there's definitely that professional relationship. But I feel like we also we show up very authentically and we put our personhood and our humanness first. Because I do think that when people walk into the space, it can be hard to remember that we're people and they can think, well, they have all their stuff together and there's no way that, they're going to want to hear X, Y, and Z. Not only do I want to hear it because why would I be a therapist if I didn't? I have a lot of compassion and empathy for you because I've experienced a lot of it as well. And even though my coping skill might look different, I've definitely had my own weeds in my garden, So judge is a harsh word. Do I take what you're saying to me and then think about possible ways that we can like reframe what you're saying or that we can work through some of the challenges? Absolutely. But am I also taking what you're saying and feeling like an immense amount of empathy and compassion for you because I have the resources and the training to recognize that none of these negative coping skills are happening in a vacuum. They're all happening because you've been hurt at some point in your life, and like hurt people.
Absolutely.
100%.
Right. And I can vouch for that. I understand the balance you're talking about because I've been in Sophros and it is a very welcoming space. And so it's nice to walk in and feel comfortable. But as you have both explained, of course, there are boundaries with your therapist because, it's not your friend, it's not your family member. It's someone who's been clinically trained to understand our behaviors, our addictions, and then help us through that and give us what we need to recover.
Yep.
So if you decide that's something that you're interested in, you can call Sophros at 904-439-4805. 904-439-4805, or check out their website, sophrosrecovery.com. This is Healing Your Life with Sophros Recovery. Welcome back to Healing Your Life with Sophros Recovery. I'm April Davis here with Clinical Director of Sophros Recovery, Erin Moran, and also a therapist at Sophros. Her name is Faith Ponti. So thank you for joining us today, ladies. And we're excited to talk about therapy. I am. Hopefully you have become excited about the experience listening to us today because it can be extremely beneficial, especially when it comes to addiction recovery, which is what Sophros Recovery is an expert in. So obviously there's one-on-one therapy, but also you offer group therapy, and we want to talk a little bit about what exactly is that, what can you expect, and what are the benefits of group therapy?
Yeah. So a lot of times people will feel very nervous going into groups. When you have the idea of therapy from television, from, movies, or just our natural ideas, we think about one-on-one. We think about a therapist sitting in a chair and then you sitting in another chair talking in a room by yourselves. Group therapy can feel very intimidating, very scary to a lot of people. However, research shows that group is, at a minimum, equally effective as individual, but oftentimes it's more effective than individual therapy. And here's why. As a therapist, if I give feedback or if I, maybe ask a question, it's sort of this part of like, okay, well, you have to say that. You're the therapist. If a group member and a peer says something, there's different weight and different power to that. There's a part of it where we no longer feel alone. Other people share a story and it's sort of this experience of like, are you in my head? That's the kind of stuff that I say to myself, or that's the stuff that I do. The stuff that I maybe keep hidden and secret that I want to hide or bury. And as someone else, it comes out of their lips, what I experience or I think or I feel, it no longer is this experience of, and I don't like the word crazy, but I know we often say that to ourselves. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm messed up. Maybe I'm a problem. And as other people start to share these things, we realize, oh, this is a very human experience and I am not messed up. The situation and the environment oftentimes like hurt people. And maybe my behaviors or thinking aren't really helping me, but that doesn't mean that I'm broken or I'm bad. It sort of challenges this black or white thinking and starts to recognize that so much of life and humaning exists in this gray area. And kind of the other part to it is I view it as a stage and a place to practice these new skills. We can start to talk about them and learn them in individual therapy. As we go into a group, that's when we can practice being really open and vulnerable, sharing a little bit more of ourselves. I kind of say like removing the mask just a little bit and seeing, well, what happens when I share a little more of myself, as well as learning about some of my blind spots, some of these parts and these patterns that continuously show up. And I'm like, why? Why does this keep happening? Well, in group, that's going to show up. If I tend to be someone who's really, really quiet and I never say anything, that's going to play out over and over again. If I'm someone who shares a lot, or maybe I give a lot of advice, that's going to show up in a group setting, and it gives us an opportunity to get feedback as to, well, how do other people feel about it? And how is that impacting me in all of these other different relationships? So that's why it's a really cool and powerful, I just love it. It's a really amazing experience to watch clients try on different ways of being.
Is it especially powerful for specifically addiction recovery?
Yes. And I think because of the magic word that Erin shared is vulnerability. I'm holding my V's up, my peace signs. I do it in group all the time. When somebody shares something, I double peace sign and say vulnerable.
Yes.
So vulnerable because, and I don't have the stats on this, right, but I watching people like enter our program, you know, and see them leave, you know, usually, hopefully, you know, successfully in terms of they've been able to maintain their sobriety and they're on like a road to recovery. I think one of the key indicators in my experience is the more vulnerable and less prideful you can be in a space with other people, the more likely you are going to be able to utilize the coping skills that we're teaching and maintain sobriety. Because, I mean, I teach finger painting. I'll do finger painting group once a month. Yeah. And I have people come in that are, you know, just maybe freshly sober or really still angry, really hurt, right? And a lot of times when that happens, like your ego, that pride is kind of driving the bus, right? Somewhere, you're in there somewhere, you might be in the back, you know, but your ego, the really angry, hurt, annoyed, scared, cool, kind of trying to be cool guy or girl is driving the bus. And then I asked that guy to finger paint.
There you go.
You know, and sometimes they're like, no, man, I'm not doing that, right? But when I can watch that person choose, make an active, conscious decision to say, I don't really understand why this is going to help me, finger painting in front of 10 people, and then processing how it felt, but I'm going to choose to do it and intentionally do it and then talk about it, that person tends to, in my experience, break down that ego a little bit more quickly, tap into vulnerability, and then be able to be really honest about what's hurting them or what's scaring them. Because if you can't be honest with your therapist, much less with a group of people, with what's hurting you and scaring you, then you can never work through it.
Right. And I have some, other than finger painting, I have some questions about specific group therapy activities coming up. But if you think that this might be something that could work for you, or you just have questions about this kind of therapy, you'll want to call Soft Roast Recovery. Their number is 904-439-4805. Again, 904-439-4805. This is Healing Your Life with Soft Roast Recovery. And if you're looking for their website, Soft Roast is spelled SOPHROS, recovery.com. And we're here with the clinical director of the facility. Her name is Erin Moran, and a therapist, Faith Ponti. And when I came in one day, you were talking about some sort of mirror therapy. I'm curious if you can describe that.
Oh, my.
Goosebumps talking about it. So talk about vulnerability.
Yeah, this was an amazing exercise. So one of our therapists, and again, I love to just say how amazing my team is. I'm just honored to be able to work with them and watch them do their therapy. It's so rewarding. This exercise, basically, they sat in a chair and held
with
up
everybody
a mirror.
else around them.
with other clients around them.
And this is not day one, obviously.
No,
it could be.
It could be for some.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And they held up a mirror, and it was two sides. So the one was, say to yourself, looking at yourself in the mirror, all of the negative things you say about yourself. Those harsh, critical, talking about the judgments, the judgmental things that we all say. We all have an inner critic. Some are more loud than others. But looking at yourself in the mirror. And then the opposite of it, after that was done, was saying things to yourself that you would say to your best friend, to someone who you love and you care about and you adore, while also looking at yourself. And really the experience being so different. You know, for some people, it was really hard to be cruel to themselves. Other people, that came off so natural. And the opposite of when you were being kind to yourself. So we just do all sorts of, you know, experiential activities, but we also do just, you know, therapy talking groups. We also will do skill and education groups. So those are learning distress tolerance, emotion regulation, different coping skills, assertive communication techniques. So it's all different types of groups to learn and to practice. And I think the biggest thing, and one point that Faith was pointing out, was we have to learn how to step outside of our comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
Our comfort zone is our bubble. It keeps us safe. We all need that. However, the thing that keeps us safe eventually can also become our cage.
Yes.
It is our thing that traps us and it keeps us stuck. What we want to do is ask people to take a step outside of it, not a giant leap, because then you're going to be like, I'm not doing that again. Hands up, no way. But a little step of just being a little bit uncomfortable helps you to grow your bubble, to learn something new, and to become more empowered.
And I always tell my clients, I really want you to feel safe. I really don't want you to feel super comfortable. If you think about like a three ring target, that outside ring is like, I'm really comfortable here. I'm really safe. I'm not going to share a lot. You know, that bullseye is panic zone. Like, okay, I feel very unsafe. I feel very uncomfortable. Maybe doing, like, if the mirror activity was your first day, the bullseye is maybe like, that's like, okay, I first day, I might just observe.
Yes.
But that middle ring is, I think, where like long-term sobriety lives. I think that's where like successful therapy lives. I think that's where successful relationships live a lot of times. It's those really uncomfortable conversations and uncomfortable activities that you inevitably end up feeling safe in because the people around you are holding you.
And I've talked to Erin before about very specific plans for every individual.
Yes.
So it really depends on who you are, what your issues are, what your relationships are. But I'll give out the number here in just a moment, and so people can give you a call. But, you wanted to get to the point, Erin, about people can call you and maybe Sophros is not going to work for them, but you have lots of resources and you can help them that way.
Yeah, I think a big thing of Sophros and one of our values is we want people to help. We want to help people to heal their lives. And if they don't struggle with substance use, if that's not the thing that they are needing, or if they can't do, an all-day or half-day program, call us still. We will find you the resource that maybe is helping you. If it's not us, I just want people to heal. I want people to navigate life in a way that feels a lot better. And so we're here to help and support, even if it's providing a name to someone else.
Right. And we're talking about any sort of substance abuse. Who should be calling you?
If you think, if in your head you're thinking, maybe I should call, you should call.
Yeah,
right. I mean, but concerned family members can call, right? Obviously, it has to be, the individual has to consent to treatment, right? But a concerned family member can call an individual who's wondering, or even just kind of thinking, is my use falling into a space that's not necessarily manageable, or that feels like it's not necessarily misuse, it's abuse, right? Like I'm really leaning a little bit too hard on this substance, or you're a person who cares about a person who's thinking like that.
Yeah.
Yes. Nick mentioned that when he was here, the co-owner, and saying, if you're concerned, if you're asking yourself, do I have a problem? It's probably time to talk to Sophros and see if you need some assistance in that area. Thank you so much, Erin Moran and Faith Ponti, for joining me today and giving such great information about, what is therapy and should I even consider it? And I think you've given us some gems to think about as far as if we think we might need help, at least make the phone call.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. And if you want to make that phone call to Sophros Recovery, the number is 904-439-4805. Again, 904-439-4805. Hope you join us again next weekend, Sunday at 1 o'clock. This is Healing Your Life with Sophros Recovery.